Okay, so you're an executive at a toy game company and you have successfully created a trading card game backed by a popular anime that is selling millions of units. What do you do next? Try to do it again, right? Well, that is what the creators of Yu-Gi-Oh! Tried to do with Dungeon Dice Monsters. The game was developed around 2001 and utilized the same monsters and similar setting as the popular Duel Monsters card game. Although, I played a lot back then and no one called it Duel Monsters. You would just ask someone if they wanted to play Yu-Gi-Oh! However, knowing the sales power of anime and manga, both featured a storyline around this new dice-based game. This featured a new antagonist who is the creator of Dungeon Dice Monsters in-universe and features the typical over-the-top Yu-Gi-Oh! Character designs. As a quick side note, I will be using the English dub and names of characters for this video. I enjoyed the anime a lot as a kid and only ever really experienced the English dub. I have no real stake in the sub versus dub debate out there, but Joey Wheeler will always sound like a wannabe New Yorker to me.
Yeah, right, I'll autograph a card for you.
So our new bad guy is this stylish individual named Duke Devlin. And yes, they make quite a few Dookie jokes throughout this arc.
Cause when I'm through with you, Dookie, there won't be anything left.
Duke has different motivations depending on the manga or the anime, but both of them really just lead to a strong desire to defeat the recently crowned king of games, Yugi Muto, and prove that he was a cheater in those recent victories as well. This entire story arc takes place near the end of Season 1 for the anime, and serves as a bit of an epilogue story after the main events in the Duelist Kingdom have wrapped. Duke is the new hotness in school, and ends up baiting everyone's favorite idiot, Joey Wheeler, into a game of Duel Monsters, with the stakes being either Duke shuts down his new game shop, or Joey becomes Duke's servant for 1 week. Just saying those are not equal. I do find it interesting that Duke challenges Joey in a draft-style battle where both of them will open new packs and build decks. Really fun way to shake up a match without relying on previously built decks. Joey ends up losing his duel pretty quickly and is forced to wear a dog suit as part of his servitude to Duke. Yugi is watching his friend be humiliated and decides enough is enough.
Get up! I have to put a stop to this! Yu-Gi-Oh!
In case you are unfamiliar with Yu-Gi-Oh!, this is kind of the central mechanic of the entire series. Prior to the beginning of it all, our young protagonist Yugi solved the fabled Millennium Puzzle. That's the Mr. T-worthy pendant that this kid is always wearing. This connected him with the spirit sealed inside, an ancient pharaoh, and allows Yugi the ability to channel the spirit into his body and work together to solve puzzles and games. Yami Yugi, as he is known once transformed, typically faces the tougher opponents and will show up anytime the main crew find themselves in danger. I would also like to point out that this character goes much harder in the manga. I won't go too deep, but he has a nasty habit of making everything a shadow game and punishing the losers very harshly. Just suffice it to say that Dookie Poo here got off pretty easy in the long run compared to some of Yugi's past foes. So Yugi challenges Duke in order to save his friend from wearing a dog suit and being humiliated for a week, not realizing that this was Duke's plan all along. Duke then switches it up and tells Yugi that he will only face him using his recently invented game of Dungeon Dice Monsters. Despite not knowing the rules, Yugi feels forced to accept the challenge and rely on his superior gaming skills to win the day. That and his massive amounts of plot armor, of course. With the quick transition of the gaming board, the match begins. Duke sets out to an early lead by taking advantage of Yugi's lack of knowledge regarding the game, typically only explaining a rule or mechanic after exploiting it against Yugi.
Hey, this ain't fair, Duke!
You should have told Yugi all the rules before the game started!
This different dice level stuff changes everything. You should start the game fresh.
If it were someone else, maybe. But not the king of games. He'll be okay.
They really go out of their way to repeatedly explain the rules throughout this episodes, most likely in an attempt to entice fans to play this brand new game. Duke continues to pull ahead until Yugi eventually learns that he can use a built-in pad to research the game rules. This allows Yugi to go on an offensive of his own, and he actually manages to pull out a lead against Duke. Despite this back and forth, Duke starts to win again, utilizing secret abilities and item dice to outmaneuver Yugi and take control of the field. This is one of the more interesting aspects of Dungeon Dice Monsters in my opinion. You can get lucky with monster summons and essentially box out your opponent's area and ability to summon anything in response. You'll see later in the GBA game how to do that. After some showboating from Duke and his crew, Yugi falls back on his tried and true strategy of believing himself. and ultimately being extremely lucky. This allows Yugi to roll a lucky summon for his signature monster, the Dark Magician, and utilize one of the alternate shapes to dimension his dice into the only slot he had left. The Dark Magician is probably the most iconic card for the entire series, maybe tied with the famous Blue Eyes White Dragon, and has always been a bit OP in the context of the show for our friend Yugi. Well, it's no different here, and Yugi is able to utilize the multiple special abilities of the Dark Magician to overcome Duke's monsters and pull out a win at the last second. Now, if this was the manga, right about now, Duke would be transformed into a dice himself or forced to run from a giant pair of dice to avoid being crushed, but the anime decided to take the forgiveness and friendship route instead.
Game is over now. Let's just leave the fighting on the field, because revenge leaves you with nothing except more bad feelings, Duke. And if you're truly sorry, the best thing to do is be friends.
I am sorry. And you're offering me something better than winning.
Friendship always is.
Aww.
Yay, the good guys win! So with all that said and done, the anime went on to further plot lines and returned to a focus on the card game Duel Monsters, but this was not the end of Dungeon Dice Monsters overall. Enter my favorite handheld console of all time, the Game Boy Advance. Developed and published by Konami, Yu-Gi-Oh! Dungeon Dice Monsters was released in Japan in 2001 and ported to the US in 2003. The gameplay revolves around the titular game, with some of the rules slightly adapted to make the game a bit more fair and balanced. The game was mostly well received at the time, with most publications praising the complexity possible, but criticizing the steep learning curve and lack of a tutorial. Despite these very fair points, I owned this game myself back in the day and spent hours playing against the various AI characters from the show. The main gameplay loop involves playing against those different AIs, winning dice as you go, continuously increasing your own dice pool, and strengthening the combination strategies available to you. The tournament mode is kind of the meat and bones of it all. It would feature multiple characters in a single elimination style bracket that would see them all competing for the top spot. You would select your 15 dice just like in the show before a match, then the game lets you pick 2 of the 3 dice per turn, and it will attempt to find a third dice that increases your chances of landing your desired result. You can even set the different crest and not attempt to summon if you already have some monsters in play. There are a few different strategies available due to the many combinations of dice, but I always had success with an aggressive strategy that attempted to limit the space my opponent has available to dimension their dice. If they cannot summon, then you can end the battle quickly, even with a low-level monster. I like the added drama of the music changing when either player is down to 1 heart left, but after a few matches in a row, it did get a bit repetitive. Especially considering that some of the regular match music is really nice comparatively. That is really all there is to this game. Keep playing and keep winning dice until you eventually complete the collection. I was pretty terrible about keeping my stuff growing up, so I have no clue how close to completion I actually got back in the day. It was a really great road trip game and we traveled a lot, so I'm sure I had more than a few dice overall. Now, games are cool, but everybody knows that the real money comes from merchandise and toys. Toy giant Mattel published a physical version of the game in 2002 that featured dice, figurines, cards, and game mats. Everything you would need to play the game at home. The first sets in Japan even featured plastic dice that would actually unfold and make the play area for the game. This was later updated in the US release to add solid dice and pre-cut cardboard pieces instead. This did create a unique limitation in that both players used the same pieces overall and thus limited the total summons available by either side. I did look into getting some of these for the video, but figured I probably shouldn't spend money on a 20-year-old board game that no one plays anymore. Enjoy this commercial instead.
Welcome to my arena. Here, cards are for cowards, and dice rule the day. Monsters show no mercy, and only I know how to play.
Don't miss the Yu-Gi-Oh! Special event, Dungeon Dice Monsters, this Monday through Thursday at 4:30 on Kids WB.
So now that you understand the elaborate rules of Dungeon Dice Monsters, there's really only one thing left to say. I challenge you to a duel. If I win, then you have to subscribe and watch all my future videos. If you win, then I will be forced to continue making YouTube videos forever. Like the video if you liked it. I always appreciate any and all of your time. I've been Dr. Ursa, and until next time, take care.